Hi, my name is Adam, and today we are going to be looking at the gear that I use to make my music. And I was excited to share because I think that my setup is a bit unique in that I use real pedals, a real amp, but cab simulations and additional plugins in Logic Pro. And I have found that this setup has really given me the best of both worlds, where I can have pedals at my feet to tweak and adjust in real time, and also be able to have the flexibility of working in a digital audio workstation. This sort of hybrid analog digital setup has really made my workflow very efficient and allowed me to streamline my creative process, so I'm not worried about technical issues along the way. I can really focus on the music that I'm creating and know that every time I sit down to write, I'm going to get the same result from my equipment, and I can trust it to do what I want it to do. If you're new to the channel, hi, I'm Adam. I make ambient music with guitar. This is an entirely new type of video for me to create. I usually just post videos of me performing, no talking. If y'all like this kind of video, I'll definitely plan to make more in the future. So with that, let's dive in. Before we start looking at the pedals, I do want to share the guitar that I use for everything I write. This is a Fender American Standard Telecaster, all stock hardware, stock pickups and everything. It was built in 1999, I believe. It's the only electric guitar that I own, and I've been playing it for about 10 years now. Let's talk about the pedal board. The board itself is a Temple Audio Duo 24. It's a really awesome board that lets me have my power supplies mounted underneath. Has a really cool sort of like modular grid system for placing pedals on the board, and I've really enjoyed having it. These are all the pedals that I use for all of my music creation. There's about 15 pedals on the board, and it's a fairly straightforward setup. My pedals follow a pretty traditional signal chain. Signal from my guitar travels through the board from right to left, from dry effects to delays to reverbs. And this is a pretty common recommendation that you'll see on a lot of pedal videos out there, where people are asking about the order in which they should place their pedals. This is probably the best place to start, but by no means is there any right or wrong answer. I highly recommend you experiment and try things out and see what works for you. I'll briefly talk about each pedal and sort of just go through the chain from start to end. First up is my volume pedal and tuner. It's the Dunlop Mini. Very simple, great for swells, obviously. And the nice thing about it having the auxiliary out means I can use the tuner while the volume pedal is in the heel down position, not letting any audio pass through. From there, we go to the Soul Food, made by Electro Harmonics. Pedal off, my guitar sounds like this. And on. And it's basically functioning as my foundation EQ, where it's doing the bulk of the tone shaping of my sound, carving out quite a bit of low end, accentuating the mids. I keep the drive down pretty low because I'm not really looking for it to give me any breakup. I'm just using it to sort of sculpt the sound before it reaches any other pedals. Next up is the MXR Studio Compressor. This pedal typically serves me to act as a clean boost to raise the level of my signal, and I'm not looking for that like squishy compression sound. So you'll see I'm usually only getting 1 to maximum 3 dBs of gain reduction. Next up is the EHX Pitchfork. This is a octave pedal. It also has octave up and combination of octave up and down. And the combo. The combination can sound very organy. I mostly use the octave down to add extra weight to chords. So I could do something like this. I love that sound. Next pedal is this big yellow one. I get asked about this a lot, but it's really just two Boss pedals in disguise. The right side is a Boss SD1 Super Overdrive. The left side is the NS2, which is their noise suppressor. I had it rehoused into one enclosure because I love using both those pedals together, and I could give myself top-mounted jacks, which means I can save a little bit of space on the board. It's not as bulky. I prefer to use the overdrive with the drive knob all the way down, or very minimally with the level all the way up. Off. So you'll see now we're introducing some low gain breakup, and it's also kind of adding like a natural compression where it's really like flattening my signal out, adding a little bit more mid EQ presence. I like that I can still play delicately and it doesn't break up, but if I wanted to, really dig in, like I can definitely get that bite. The Soul Food and the Super Overdrive are my two stages of drive options, but the compressor can really act as a third. When I use it as a clean boost, I'm raising the input signal going into the overdrive, causing it to break up even harder. And with the overdrive, so yeah, pretty cool. I have 3 delays: the Strymon Timeline, the Digitech Digidelay, and the ARP87. And they all act a little differently, and that's great because the whole point of this board is to give me options. The Timeline serves as kind of my, what I'd say my foundation delay. And by that, I mean it's almost exclusively set to something very simple like a quarter note or a dotted eighth. The actual trails of the delay are very simple and clean. I really enjoy this pedal because it has tons of preset options and several different types of delay, some of which can get pretty experimental and can really, make you think differently and more creatively. One of my favorite sounds is this sort of like cassette emulation. It sounds like this. Another cool one is called ducking delay or dynamic delay. Basically, the trails are reactive to your performance, and so the delays will actually dip below your playing, and as you stop, they will come back up and sort of fill in the gaps where you're not. The next pedal in the chain is the Digidelay, and in my opinion, this is the most underrated pedal on my board and underrated delay pedal on the market. It's a very old pedal. I've had this one for over 10 years, and it's still on my board, so that should tell you a lot about how much I enjoy it and also just the durability of it. I've had the same pedal this whole time, and it's never had an issue. I use the Digidelay mostly for three things. 1, modulated delay, 2, reverse delay, and 3, as a looper. Reverse delay. I like the little bit of randomness that it can create. Next up is the ARP87. This is a really cool pedal. I mostly use the lo-fi program on it. It has 2 latching features in it. If you hold down the left switch, it raises the X knob, which is like a modulation, all the way up. And if you hold down the right switch, it maxes out the repeats and actually starts to oscillate on the lo-fi channel, which can be really cool for like slow build-ups where I'm like playing long progressions but want something extra to come in, something sort of textural. If you've been watching my channel for a while now, you know I love this next pedal. It's the Earthquaker Devices Dispatch Master. It is a half reverb, half delay combo, and I'm not sure where I would be without it. A cool thing you can do if you're only using the reverb, raising the repeats knob introduces much more low end. So it sounds like this at the minimum. And at the maximum, it sounds like this. Pretty cool. We have the Illumine reverb. This is a absolute workhorse reverb and probably the last reverb that I will ever buy because it does everything, honestly. You could compare it to something like the Big Sky, you know, like the Strymon Timeline sibling, where it's just several reverb engines, tons of presets. In Logic, I use their reverb plugin a ton. And the nice thing about the Illumine is that they have their plugin reverb engine in the pedal, so I can have the sound that I use in the studio available to me on my board wherever I go. The third reverb in my chain is the Walrus Audio Slotva. It is the expanded version of their slow pedal, which has been very popular over the years for its -1 octave reverb sound. This is the exact same pedal, it just has presets. And the one I use the most is the Dream setting, because the right switch can function as a latching pad. Sounds like this. And so while the pad is going, I might use my other two reverb pedals behind it so I can still perform with, you know, a healthy amount of reverb involved. I have two dedicated loop pedals and two other pedals that can function as a loop, for a total of 4 possible loop pedals. Starting from the left to the right, we have the Ditto Plus, the Ditto X4, the Digitech Digidelay, and the Timeline. The Ditto Plus functions exclusively as a looper. This pedal is the very last thing in my chain, and I sort of use it kind of like a memory card. I can hit record on that at the start of a session, and it'll capture everything that I've played, and I can keep that, and at a later point I can run it into Logic Pro, record it for real, adjust tones on my amp, and you know, have essentially like a DI version of my performance. And I use the air quotes because all of my pedals are baked into the recording. I have the Ditto X4, which has 2 independent loop slots, which has been very helpful for mixing and blending layers together over time. The Digidelay has a 4-second delay. I'll typically use that one for like a very simple pad or something where I'm not looking to record a long time. I just need a little piece of something like a drone. Lastly, the Strymon Timeline has a very similar feature where I think I have about 60 seconds of loop time available, and I have the timeline set up where the looper is pre-effect, and that means whatever I loop, the delay effect is not baked into the loop on the timeline. I'm using the ICE algorithm here. And I could switch to another effect like that cassette one I was showing you earlier. So the next thing to talk about is the amplifier that I use. I play with a Quilter Tone Block 202. It is a solid state, go anywhere, do anything type of amplifier. And I say that because one, it's very small, it's super lightweight, and it also offers several output options, making it a very flexible device for me. I love the size. It sits right here on my desk. It's about the exact same size as my interface, and so they stack well together. I can run a 1/4-inch line out signal from my amp directly into my interface. The line out is independent of the master volume knob, which means I can have my amp running a direct signal to Logic Pro, as well as a signal to the speaker cabinet in my room, and I can control that with the master volume. The result is all the benefits of recording DI and having my true amp sound while being able to monitor with zero latency in real time in my room. So my signal chain is completed in Logic Pro, and this is the last thing we'll cover today. This is where the audio from my pedals and my amplifier arrives. You'll see here on the left that these are the 5 plugins that I use to complete my signal. We have a noise gate, a compressor, an EQ, my cab sim, and a stereo reverb. The noise gate is very subtle. I named my preset subtle. The threshold is very low, so it's still letting all of like the little string squeaks come through, but the release is really long, so it's not very stuttery. I have the stock Logic compressor on. It's the Platinum Digital. It's the most boring sounding compressor because at this stage in my chain, I'm not really looking for additional color or tone adjustments. I just want it to act as kind of like a bus compressor, giving me roughly 3 or 4 dB of reduction. Next in the chain is my channel EQ. This is just some very final minor adjustments that I like to have before my signal reaches the cabinet, and that's an important distinction I'm making here, is that I am EQing my guitar before the cab, not after the cab. Pretty heavy low end roll off, reducing a little bit around 280, 300, and then a little bit of boost around 24K and a shelf around 46K and up. Again, this is just like some very minor adjustments I like to make before my signal hits the cab sim. The simulator I use is the Studio Cab Zilla by GGD. I pretty much exclusively use the 112 with the ribbon microphone. Finally, we have the wet reverb plugin from Neunaber. This is the last little piece of the signal chain that really just adds like that final little bit of shine to my sound. It's a stereo reverb, so it's really making everything spacious, and you'll notice that I really am not mixing in too much. It's only about 7% in the mix, but a very long decay. You can see we have just over 10 seconds of decay. It's just underneath everything, very low, very subtle, but adding a great deal when you consider all the other reverbs that I'm sending into it. I think that pretty much covers it. If I missed anything, please reach out in the comments, DM me, whatever. If you found this video helpful, please consider giving a like or subscribing to the channel. It all really does go a long way into helping me continue to do what I love to do. I'm glad we could do this, and I'll talk to you next time.